Friday night used to be my favorite part of the week. The work grind would finally loosen its grip, and for a few hours it felt like Ellie and I could breathe again. No emails, no traffic, no calendar reminders, just us. Sometimes we'd order takeout, catch up on some show we kept pretending to care about, or just sit on the porch with drinks, talking about everything and nothing. That night started like it was trying to follow that familiar script. I got home around 6, changed into a hoodie, and started prepping dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread, Ellie's favorite. She said she was out with her boss for a late work lunch. I didn't think much of it. She'd been mentioning his name more often lately, something about him being intense but brilliant and how he saw her potential. I was halfway through chopping garlic when the front door opened. Ellie walked in, laughing at something on her phone. She looked great. A little too great, maybe? Hair curled, lipstick perfect, heels clicking on the hardwood. She changed out of her usual office attire, gone were the slacks and flats. Instead, she wore the soft lilac blouse tucked into a dark skirt that hugged her hips in a way she usually saved for date nights. Something about it gave me pause. "Hey, babe," she said, tossing her bag on the counter like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Smells amazing in here." I smiled, but something in my chest tightened. "You're late." "Thought it was a lunch." She rolled her eyes. "You know how it goes." Boss wanted to talk career tracks, and then everyone started ordering drinks. It turned into one of those weird after-hours things. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, quick, casual, distracted. That's when I saw it. Right there on her neck, near her collarbone, was a smudge of dark lipstick. Not smudged like she'd wiped it off. Smudged like it had been put there, maybe during a moment too rushed, too clumsy to clean up. I stared at it. That wasn't her shade. Ellie always went for soft pinks, maybe a peach tone on a bold day. This was deep berg asterisk and Y. Almost purple. She noticed my stare and tilted her head. "What?" "Nothing," I lied, turning back to the pasta. "Just tired." My heart wasn't racing yet. Not quite. But something primitive in my gut started whispering, "Pay attention." She wandered off toward the bedroom, still giggling at her phone. That was another thing. The giggles. The little laughs that didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. They'd started showing up more over the past month, like she was texting a stand-up comic I didn't know about. I used to ask, "What's so funny?" Now I didn't bother. I heard the shower turn on. Steam began to slip under the door. Her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't mean to look. It just happened. One glance, maybe half a second. The screen lit up with a message preview from a contact with no name, just a number. The text read, "Thanks for the wild break, baby face blowing kiss." My breath caught. Wild break. Baby. Not hun, not girl, not a nickname between friends. Baby. The phone buzzed again. This time I looked longer. It wasn't just that the message existed, it was that it was so casual. Like whoever sent it had no fear. No concern. Like it was a regular thing. I stared at the message, unsure what to feel first: shock, betrayal, denial? Or maybe just that slow, aching nausea that hits when your brain finally catches up to something your heart's known for a while. I didn't open the phone. I didn't snoop further. That's what's weird. I didn't even need to. One message was enough. The tone, the emoji, the timing, it painted the entire picture. Ellie came out of the shower 10 minutes later, wrapped in a towel, hair wet and skin flushed from the steam. She looked like the same woman I married. Almost. But now that picture-perfect version of her felt like a memory I couldn't trust. She grabbed her phone off the counter. Paused. I watched her eyes flick to the locked screen. She saw the message. I know she did. But she said nothing. Instead, she put on a smile and asked, "So, what movie are we watching tonight?" I don't remember what I said. Probably something about not being in the mood. My voice felt far away, like it belonged to someone else. She noticed the change, I know she did. But she played along anyway, babbling about how tired she was and how office politics were absolutely draining. She even made a joke about needing a vacation. She laughed like everything was fine. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I wanted it to be a misunderstanding, a misread, a joke between coworkers, anything but what it looked like. But she was too calm, too composed, like she'd rehearsed this moment. So I said nothing. The rest of the night passed like a badly written play. We ate in front of the TV. She laughed a few times at some dumb show we used to enjoy. I don't think I said more than 10 words. She didn't notice or pretended not to. Around 10, she yawned dramatically and said she was turning in. She gave me a soft kiss and disappeared into our room. I sat there alone, the flicker of the television the only light in the room. The plate on my lap was cold. The fork still had food on it. I hadn't taken a single bite. All I could see was that lipstick smudge. All I could hear was that text replaying in my mind like a broken record. Thanks for the wild break, baby. I stared at our wedding photo on the bookshelf. She looked so happy in that picture, eyes lit up, dress glowing in the sunlight. I looked at myself beside her. I barely recognized that man. He looked sure of everything. Like he knew the ground beneath him would never crack. That night, something inside me cracked. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't throw things or confront her or storm out. I just sat in the silence and realized something. This wasn't just a one-off. This wasn't a flirtatious message sent by mistake. This was the tail end of a rope that stretched back months, maybe longer. And she didn't even bother to hide it. Not really. That was the worst part. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the ease of it. The casual nature. The way she slipped it in, expecting me not to notice. Or worse, not to care. It was like being handed your own obituary and asked to proofread it. So I sat there. And I listened. To the silence between us. To the quiet hum of a marriage that might have already died. That was the night everything changed, not in an explosive, dramatic kind of way, but in a subtle, deeply cutting way. The kind of change that doesn't announce itself. It just sits with you. Quiet. Heavy. Final. And in that stillness, I understood something I hadn't dared admit until now. She lied. And that was the beginning of the end. They say hindsight is 20/20ths, but nobody ever tells you how cruel it can be. That weekend, after the lipstick and the message and her too sweet laugh, I started seeing everything differently. Like flipping a switch on the past. Suddenly, every overlooked detail, every quiet instinct I buried, came roaring back like a movie I never realized I'd been starring in. Saturday morning came. Ellie was humming in the kitchen, making pancakes like nothing had happened. She was always like that, good at routine. She could build a perfect day around a lie and make it taste like syrup and cinnamon. "You're quiet," she said over her shoulder, spatula in hand. "Didn't sleep well," I replied. She nodded, not pushing. Of course she didn't. Why would she? I sat at the table and watched her move, graceful, effortless, like nothing was weighing her down. But in my chest? It felt like I was swallowing bricks. After breakfast, she kissed me on the forehead and said she was heading to the gym. "They're doing this new spin class," she said, tying her hair into a ponytail. Thought I'd give it a try. I looked down at the sneakers by the door, hers clean as the day we bought them 3 months ago. "Cool," I said, without looking up. She left and I just sat there. And that's when the memories started. Small ones at first. Quiet red flags I'd pushed aside. I thought they were just stress or me being overprotective. But now each one felt like a breadcrumb I had ignored on the path to this exact moment. Like the time she declined a call without checking who it was. We were watching a movie when she picked and her phone buzzed. She grabbed it fast, pressed the side button to silence it, then flipped it face down on the couch. "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Spam," she said. "They've been calling nonstop. I should block the number." I didn't question it. Or the night I woke up and she wasn't in bed. It was 2:13 a.m. I remember because the clock glared red in the dark. I got up, half asleep, and found her in the kitchen with her laptop open. She looked startled, like I'd walked in on something. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Thought I'd knock out some work." I looked at the screen. An empty spreadsheet stared back at me. "Since when do you work in Excel?" She smiled. "I'm learning it. Figured it'd look good for the next quarterly review." I nodded, kissed her head, and went back to bed. That was 6 weeks ago. Then there was the cologne. That was maybe the biggest one. It was on her jacket. A sharp, expensive scent I didn't recognize. It clung to the collar, and I noticed it when she dropped it on the couch one night after saying she had a late client meeting. When I mentioned it, she laughed. "Oh my God, that's Kyle's," she said. "He wears half a bottle of whatever cologne his girlfriend bought him." Sat next to me in the Uber. "Sorry if I reek." "Kyle?" Her coworker. I remember how casually she said his name like it was no big deal. But now, looking back, I don't think it was him. I don't even think there was an Uber. There were other things, too. Things I had chalked up to stress, coincidence, or just the natural wear and tear of being together for years. Like the fact that she started locking her phone. She used to leave it everywhere, counters, bedside table, bathroom sink. Now, it was always on her, always locked, notifications turned off. She'd even flipped her privacy settings so previews didn't show up anymore. I asked her once, teasingly, "What are you hiding from me?" She smiled and kissed me. "Just your birthday plans, Mr. Suspicious." But my birthday came and went. No surprises. No plans. I thought about the office parties I was never invited to. Early on, she used to beg me to come. "It won't be the same without you," she'd say. But somewhere along the way that changed. Now it was, You'd be so bored. Or it's just the staff, nothing big. Or you hate small talk anyway. And maybe I did. But that wasn't the point. Then there was that one morning. I remember it vividly. I woke up to an empty bed. The sheets were cold, like she'd been gone for a while. I checked my phone. 6:47 a.m. A little early for her to be out. I assumed maybe she went for a run. She'd been talking about getting healthier, starting fresh, whatever that meant. But her sneakers were still by the door, untouched. When she came back around 8 o'clock, hair wet, cheeks flushed, I asked her where she went. "Gym," she said. "Thought I'd get a head start today." I looked down at her sneakers again. She was wearing different shoes, ones I hadn't seen in a while. The pit in my stomach grew a little bigger. I thought about how she started humming in the shower again. She used to do that when we were dating, happy, careless humming. For years it disappeared. Then out of nowhere it came back. Soft and melodic. A tune I didn't recognize. Was it someone else's song? Someone else's memory? By Sunday I couldn't look at her the same way. Everything she did, every smile, every comment, every casual brush of her hand against mine, felt like it belonged to a different version of us. A version where I didn't know better. But now I did. I started tracking the lies in my head like tally marks, each one stacking on top of the next. The phone flipped over. The lipstick, the unnamed contact, the cologne, the fake gym sessions, the ghost office parties, the humming. The part that hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was how close I came to missing it all. How easy it would have been to write it off again, to keep pretending. But I couldn't anymore. That one message on Friday had pulled the thread loose, and now the whole thing was unraveling. Our life, our trust, our shared rhythm. Every time I looked at her, I saw a version of Ellie I didn't recognize. And maybe that's what betrayal really is. Not just the act itself, but the realization that the person you thought you knew has been slowly vanishing, one lie at a time, and you didn't even notice until it was too late. Sunday night, I lay in bed beside her, wide awake. I could hear her breathing, slow and steady, like she hadn't a care in the world. But my thoughts wouldn't stop. I kept thinking about how long she'd been gone from this marriage, mentally, emotionally, and how long I'd been here alone, pretending I wasn't. And the most haunting question of all? When exactly did she stop choosing me? Because I never stopped choosing her. By the time Thursday rolled around, I was no longer wondering if Ellie was cheating. That question had quietly left the building days ago. Now the question clawing at me was how far it had gone. How deep the betrayal ran. How long she'd been spinning the story behind my back while pretending our marriage was still intact. She came home that evening humming again, tossing her bag on the couch with that same carefree energy that used to charm me. Now it just made my skin crawl. "You won't believe what my boss is doing this weekend," she said as she slipped off her heels. "He's throwing this ridiculous themed party, like full costumes and everything." "Oh yeah," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "Yeah," she went on, heading into the kitchen. "It's for team bonding or whatever, but it sounds more like an excuse to drink and act stupid. Honestly, I might go just to laugh at the chaos." I closed the lid on my laptop slowly. "You're going?" She leaned against the counter, sipping water. "Thinking about it. Kyle might go too. Could be fun." There it was. Kyle. I hadn't heard that name in a couple of weeks, but the moment she said it, something snapped into place, like a final puzzle piece clicking into a frame that had been forming all along. I smiled without smiling. "Costumes, huh? What are you gonna be?" She grinned. "No idea. Something sparkly, probably. I'll figure it out last minute." I nodded, said nothing else, and went back to pretending I cared about work. But inside I was already planning. I didn't have much, no hard evidence, no names to accuse her with, just instincts and fragmented moments that had been screaming for my attention. Still, I needed the final piece. A moment so undeniable that even she wouldn't be able to explain it away. Friday night, she was glowing. Not just dressed up glowing. She wore a shimmering gold dress that fit tighter than anything I'd seen her wear in years. Her makeup was flawless, perfume strong, her hair curled just right. She looked like someone headed out on the best night of her life. You sure this is work? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She blinked, just for a second. That micro-expression, hesitation, caught off guard. Then the smile again. Well, technically it's a company party, but it's mostly for fun. Relax, it's just drinks and music. I wanted to ask, will Kyle be there? But I didn't. I didn't need to. I already knew. She kissed me goodbye, said, don't wait up, and walked out the door. And for the first time in weeks, I felt calm. Not because I trusted her, that ship had long since sunk. No, it was because I had already made my decision. 10 minutes after she left, I followed. I knew the general location. I'd overheard her talking about it on the phone last week when she didn't realize I was in the hallway. Something about those glass-paneled houses on Hillridge, and you'll love the view. I did a quick search and it didn't take long to narrow it down. There were only a few homes like that in the area. I picked the most likely one based on what she'd said and drove. I parked across the street just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The house was huge, modern, lit from the inside like a movie set. Long windows stretched across 2 floors, revealing just enough to make me feel sick. Cars lined the driveway. Laughter spilled out every time the door opened. Music pulsed through the walls, low, seductive, like something out of a high-end lounge. Then I saw her. Ellie stepped out onto the patio laughing with a drink in her hand. Her golden dress sparkled under the hanging lights. And beside her, dressed in black, was Kyle. The same Kyle whose cologne I smelled, whose name I'd heard too many times to keep pretending it didn't matter. He was standing too close, his body angled toward hers, his hand on her lower back like it belonged there. I froze. No more assumptions. No more maybe. No more making excuses for her. I watched them laugh together like the stars of their own private movie when I hadn't been cast in. They stepped back inside and I sat there for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me. I told myself to leave. To just go home, pack a bag, and never look back. But part of me needed the full truth. The part of me that had spent years trusting her, defending her, loving her, that part demanded closure. So I waited. About 15 minutes later, I saw them again, only this time it was upstairs. One of the massive windows on the 2nd floor faced the street, partially covered by sheer curtains that glowed with the light from inside. I shouldn't have looked. I wish I hadn't looked. But I did. 2 silhouettes moved across the room. Her dress. His dark suit. Their bodies close, too close. He leaned in. Her hand reached up. Then the kiss. I saw it. Clear as day. Not a peck. Not a friendly goodbye. A slow, lingering kiss that belonged in a bedroom, not a party. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched and couldn't catch my breath. The final nail in the coffin had been hammered in, not with sound or confrontation, but with shadows on a wall. I didn't rush in. I didn't yell. I didn't even cry. I just sat there staring. And then I took off my wedding ring. It was colder than I expected, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I stepped out of the car, walked to hers, the silver hatchback she always parked with the nose tilted just slightly too far forward, and placed the ring on her hood. No note. No message. Just the ring. Let her find it. Let her figure out what it meant. I drove away in silence. No music. No thoughts. Just that cold emptiness in my chest, spreading like ice. I didn't go home right away. I took the long way past the old bookstore where we used to waste afternoons, past the park where we had our first real fight, past the diner we swore had the best waffles in the state. All those places. All those memories. I felt nothing. Because the woman I thought I knew wasn't real. She wasn't the one who cried during Pixar movies. She wasn't the one who insisted on homemade gifts every Christmas. She wasn't the one who used to trace circles on my arm when she couldn't sleep. That woman was a ghost. And the one at the party tonight, laughing in someone else's arms, was a stranger. When I finally got home, the house was dark. Still. Too clean, too perfect, like a stage set for a life that didn't exist anymore. I tossed my keys on the counter, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall for a long time. I thought about all the ways this could have gone. All the ways I could have stormed in and made a scene. All the questions I could have screamed at her. But the truth was, I didn't want answers anymore. I had them. I had proof. Not in photos. Not in texts. But in my gut. In my chest. In that silent kiss behind the curtain. And somehow that was worse than anything else. Because it wasn't loud. It was quiet. An asterisk mate. Intentional. She didn't just cheat on me. She chose him. And that choice, that quiet, undeniable, final choice, was the end of us. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, I just didn't want to. I didn't want the stillness of sleep to erase what I'd seen, or the clarity that had finally settled over me like a thin, cold sheet. There's something oddly peaceful about the moment right after you let go of hope. It's not joyful. It's not liberating in the way people romanticize. But it's real. And real felt better than pretending. Ellie didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't check in. She had no idea I'd seen everything. No clue that while she was upstairs with him, Kyle, the man she swore was just a coworker, I was outside, watching the shadows of her betrayal play out like a private screening. I imagined she'd gone to bed that night thinking she got away with it again. That I was home, clueless and patient, maybe even a little guilty for not trusting her. I was done feeling guilty. Instead of spiraling, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went out. I drove across town to visit Marcus, an old friend I hadn't really seen much in the past couple of years. Marriage tends to isolate you when you don't fight hard enough to keep the rest of your life intact. But Marcus was still there, just like always. No judgment. No 20 questions. Just a beer in my hand and an open seat on his patio. "Damn, man," he said after I told him. "You sure?" I nodded. Saw it with my own eyes. He let out a long breath, leaning back in his chair. "I never liked her." I gave a tired smile. "Yeah, you and about 4 other people I didn't listen to. That night, we didn't talk about her much. I didn't want to. I didn't want to keep giving her space in my head. We talked about everything else: basketball, dumb high school stories, work drama, old music. Stuff that reminded me of who I was before I became someone's husband. Before my life revolved around making things work with a woman who stopped choosing me a long time ago. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt like me again. I got home a little before midnight. The driveway was empty. Her car wasn't there. I didn't care. She could have been with him still. Could have been alone. Could have been sitting in the same bedroom we once shared, wondering if she should feel bad. But I wasn't going to play that game anymore. I walked into a quiet house, dropped my keys in the dish by the door, and exhaled like I hadn't in weeks. The silence used to bother me, used to feel like an absence. But now it felt like space. Like possibility. I poured myself a glass of water and sat in the living room, the same room where we'd once danced barefoot to a playlist we made together. Now I sat there alone, but I didn't feel empty. It wasn't peace, not exactly. It was something sharper. More exact. Clarity. Around 12:45, headlights cut across the wall. I didn't move. I just listened. The familiar click of her heels on the walkway, the soft jingle of her keys, the door creaking open. Then the pause. She always paused in the doorway when she thought I might be asleep, like she wanted to gauge the energy in the room before stepping in. "Mark," she called out softly. I didn't answer. She took a few steps in, then stopped again. I could hear the way she was trying to breathe quietly. She knew something was different. She felt the air shift. She walked past the living room and down the hallway, her steps slow, cautious. I heard her open our bedroom door, then stop again. She was expecting to see me in bed, probably curled up like a fool waiting for his wife to come home. But I wasn't there. A few minutes later, I heard her in the kitchen. A chair moved. Then the unmistakable sound of quiet crying. I didn't feel sorry. Not anymore. Those weren't tears of guilt. They weren't sadness. They were fear. Fear that the control she'd been clinging to, the leash she thought she still had wrapped around my heart, was slipping away. She didn't cry when she lied. She didn't cry when she covered her tracks or when she kissed someone else in a room with wide open windows. But she cried when she realized I had stopped chasing. That silence, the one she walked into when she opened that door, that was what broke her. Not the confrontation she expected. Not the accusations or the dramatic fallout. Just silence. I went upstairs and locked the guest room door behind me. I didn't owe her anything. Not comfort. Not closure. Not my presence. The next morning I woke up before my alarm. No dreams. No tossing and turning. I felt steady. I took a long shower, shaved, even wore a shirt I hadn't touched in months. I made coffee like I always did, but this time I only poured 1 cup. When I walked into the kitchen, she was already there. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was still curled from the night before, but messier now. Her makeup was gone. Just pale skin, red eyes, and a look of someone bracing for something. She smiled, a weak, guilty thing. "Morning." I nodded, sat down, and sipped my coffee. For a minute, she tried to pretend everything was normal. Asked if I wanted eggs. Said something about the weather. Tried to crack a joke about the neighbor's barking dog. Her voice was trembling the whole time. I didn't respond. She stole glances at me, waiting for me to ask. Waiting for me to demand to know where she was. Who she was with. Why she didn't answer my texts, if she even noticed the ring. But I had no questions. Because I didn't need answers anymore. Finally, she sat down across from me and said, "Where were you last night?" I looked up from my mug, met her eyes for the first time since she'd walked in the door, and said, "Out." Her lips parted like she wanted to push further. But the way I said it, the calm finality of it, told her not to. I went back to my coffee. She waited a beat, maybe two. Then she whispered, "Mark, did something happen?" I leaned back in my chair. "Did something happen?" I repeated almost to myself. I stared at her for a moment, really stared. For the first time in years, I saw her not as my wife, not as someone I owed anything to, but as a woman who had lied, manipulated, and expected me to stay. I said nothing. And in that silence, something broke in her. Not the kind of break that happens when someone gets caught, but the kind that happens when someone realizes they've lost their grip on the narrative. The panic that comes when your lies no longer work. She started crying again, her head in her hands. "I don't know what's happening," she said between sobs. "You're scaring me." But I didn't move. Didn't reach out. Didn't comfort her. She had scared me too for months. Made me question myself. Made me feel like I was the one losing touch. Now it was her turn to sit in the unknown. I finished my coffee, stood up, and grabbed my keys. As I walked past her, she reached for my arm. "Please, Mark, talk to me." I gently pulled away. "I already have," I said quietly. "You just weren't listening." And with that, I walked out the door. Not in a storm of rage. Not in chaos. But in full control. She was no longer the center of my universe. And I was no longer hers to break. That day passed like a fogged-over mirror. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. Anger had flared up weeks ago, in flashes, in silence, in moments I didn't even recognize myself. But what replaced it now was colder. Cleaner. Like a decision made in the back room of my mind and signed with a pen dipped in resignation. I didn't go far that morning. Just drove to a coffee shop a few neighborhoods over. Ordered black coffee and sat by the window while people moved past the glass, living lives I suddenly felt separate from. Nobody knew me there. Nobody knew what had happened or what I'd seen or what I'd lost. That anonymity felt like armor. Around noon, Marcus texted. "You good?" "Yeah. Better than expected." "Want company?" I thought about it. I almost said yes. But I needed the quiet more. "Not today." "Appreciate it though." He didn't press. I sat there until the coffee went cold, watching a couple argue quietly at the corner table, some minor spat about directions, I think. The guy kept checking his phone, she kept tapping her nails on the table. Normally I would have looked away, but now I watched with something like detachment. Like I was studying a species I used to belong to. I got home around 3. Her car was still there. I didn't expect her to leave. Not yet. That would have taken a level of self-awareness I didn't believe she had. And sure enough, when I stepped inside, I found her in the living room, curled on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, wearing one of my old hoodies like it meant something. She looked up startled, like I'd caught her stealing. "Hey," she said, her voice small. "I didn't know when you'd be back." I nodded, kicked off my shoes, walked past her. I could feel her eyes tracking me like a shadow with a heartbeat. She wanted a reaction. A door she could push open. But I didn't give it to her. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter. She didn't follow. Instead, she tried again. "I've been thinking," she said, louder this time. "About everything. About us. I think we should talk." I unscrewed the bottle cap. Took a sip. "You don't have anything to say?" she asked. "I don't have anything to ask," I said. She blinked like I'd slapped her. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done being the guy who needs proof. Or explanations. Or stories that change depending on the lighting." Her lips parted. Closed. Then parted again. "Mark, I messed up. I know I did. I'm not gonna deny that. That was a first." She stood, walking slowly toward the kitchen, cautious, like I was a wild animal she wasn't sure would bite. She swallowed hard. "I want to fix it. Whatever's left to fix." I turned to face her fully. Not angry. Not cold. Just level. "What exactly do you think is left?" She faltered. "Us. This. You and me. 10 years, Mark. That has to mean something." "It did," I said. She stared at me. "Did?" "I can't want this alone," I continued. "And I won't stay married to a memory." Her hands fidgeted, wringing together like she was trying to squeeze some version of herself back into existence. "It didn't mean anything," she blurted. I raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" "It was stupid," she said quickly. "It was God, it was selfish and reckless and dumb, and I knew that even while it was happening. I felt lost. And Kyle, he noticed me. He made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore." Invisible. That word hit differently. "Do you know what it's like," she continued, voice shaking, "to wake up next to someone every day and still feel alone?" I set the water bottle down. "Yeah," I said. "I do." That shut her up. Because she realized I wasn't defending myself. I wasn't trying to correct her version of the story. I was confirming it. You think I didn't feel you slipping away? I asked. You think I didn't notice the way you stopped reaching for my hand in public, or how you'd flinch when I'd ask simple questions like where you were or who you were texting? I wasn't trying to hurt you, she whispered. But you did. Silence. The kind that hums in your ears like pressure in a plane cabin. I still love you, she said suddenly. I nodded once. I believe that. But it's not enough. She looked stunned. Like love was supposed to be a get-out-of-jail-free card. Then what do I have to do? She asked, tears beginning to well. Tell me. Say it. I'll do it. You can't undo this, I said. There's no reset button. You didn't just cheat on me. You built a second life behind my back and dressed it up as spontaneity. I didn't love him, she said, as if that made it better. Doesn't matter. I never wanted to leave you. Then why did you? She opened her mouth. Closed it. No answer. And in that silence I saw her unravel. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just piece by piece. Like a string being pulled too tight. Do you want me to leave? She asked after a long pause. I think you already did, I replied. She nodded slowly, tears finally spilling. You're not the same. No, I said. I'm not. Because that's what betrayal does. It doesn't just hurt you, it changes you. And she could feel it now. That I wasn't responding the way she'd expected. That I wasn't collapsing or raging or demanding she make it right. I was just gone. Emotionally. Mentally. Maybe spiritually. She stepped forward, reached for my hand. I let her hold it for a moment. It was cold. Hesitant. Her thumb brushed against my skin like it was trying to remember how we used to fit. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I know. I thought I could control it. That made me laugh. Not loud. Not mocking. Just bitter. Hollow. You thought you could cheat on me in moderation? She flinched. I was afraid, she said, voice cracking. Afraid of losing myself. Afraid we'd stopped being us. I didn't know how to talk about it. So you talked to him instead. She didn't argue. She just cried. Softly. The kind of crying that builds pressure in your throat until it's hard to breathe. But I didn't move. Didn't pull her into a hug. Didn't wipe her tears. Because I wasn't there to comfort her anymore. That wasn't my role. She was the architect of this moment. The designer of her own heartbreak. And now she had to live in the house she built. That night, she knocked on the door to the guest room. Mark, she whispered. I stayed quiet. I'm sorry. Still quiet. I don't want to lose you. Silence. Eventually, I heard her footsteps fade. The soft creak of our bedroom door opening. Then closing. I lay there in the dark, eyes wide open, listening to the quiet of a house divided. I wasn't peaceful. I wasn't angry. I was in the eye of a storm I hadn't asked for still, but bracing for what came next. Because this was the moment she lost control. And the cruelest part?